The battle had changed. What started as a desperate struggle for survival had now turned into a fight for control. Humanity, once cowering under the shadow of the Krellians, had grown stronger, more determined. General Sarah Holt, the leader of the human resistance, stood at the helm of a new, powerful alliance. The humans had reclaimed their confidence. They had learned how to fight back, how to push the Krellians to the brink. Now, they were taking the war to the very heart of the enemy's empire. It all started when General Holt decided that the Krellian capital, their most powerful stronghold, had to be taken. The Krellians, believing humanity was broken, had grown careless. They had underestimated the human will to survive. And now it was time to show them the consequences of their arrogance. The Krellians had always thought of themselves as invincible gods, but the humans had already shattered that illusion. And now, it was time to take everything they had built. The plan was dangerous, and the stakes were higher than ever. The Krellians had the most advanced technology in the galaxy. They had fleets of powerful warships, weapons that could destroy entire planets, and armies that had crushed everything in their path. But the humans had something the Krellians could never predict: unity. The survivors had become more than just soldiers. They had become a collective force, united by one goal: to free themselves from the gods who tried to erase them. General Holt's strategy was simple but bold. Strike hard, strike fast. They would not give the Krellians time to regroup or plan their next move. The humans would infiltrate the heart of the Krellian Empire and hit them where it would hurt the most: their command center. If they could destroy the Krellian leadership, they would disrupt the entire war effort. Without their gods to lead them, the Krellians would fall apart. The human fleet was smaller than the Krellian armada, but it was more than capable of dealing a blow. Holt had brought together the best of human engineers, tacticians, and soldiers, and together they had built a fleet of their own, one that could stand against the might of the gods. Their ships were designed not just for firepower, but for speed and stealth. They would strike quickly, hit the Krellians hard, and disappear into the shadows before the gods even realized what had happened. The mission began under the cover of darkness. The human fleet made its approach toward the Krellian capital, a massive, heavily fortified station floating in the middle of the galaxy. It was surrounded by defensive shields, warships, and automated weapons that could tear apart anything that came too close. But the humans had something the Krellians did not: knowledge. Over the years of war, they had learned everything there was to know about Krellian technology. They knew how to hack into their systems, how to bypass their security measures. The first strike was a distraction. A small group of human ships launched a surprise attack on one of the Krellians' outer defenses, drawing the Krellian forces away from the capital. The trap worked perfectly. While the Krellians scrambled to defend against the decoy attack, the real force of human ships made their move. They quickly slipped past the Krellian defenses, unseen and unnoticed. Once they were within range of the Krellian capital, General Holt ordered the attack. Bombs and missiles rained down on the capital's defenses. Explosions lit up the sky as human ships made their way toward the heart of the Krellian Empire. But the Krellians were not easily defeated. They immediately retaliated, sending their most powerful warships to defend the capital. The battle was intense: blinding laser fire, massive explosions, and ship after ship destroyed as both sides fought for control. The humans, however, had the element of surprise and strategic intelligence on their side. As the battle raged on, Holt's fleet targeted the main power source of the Krellian station, the central energy core that powered the entire defense system. If they could destroy it, they would disable the Krellians' weapons and leave them vulnerable. The humans fought their way through swarms of Krellian ships, pushing forward relentlessly. General Holt, commanding from the front lines, refused to let her troops slow down. They were so close to victory, and failure was not an option. Finally, after what felt like hours of brutal fighting, the human forces made their way into the heart of the Krellian capital. The central energy core, heavily protected by elite Krellian soldiers, stood before them. General Holt and her team fought their way through the remaining defenses, pushing toward their final target. With a single decisive move, they planted the bombs that would destroy the core. The countdown began. As the humans made their retreat, explosions rocked the Krellian capital. The energy core was destroyed, and with it, the entire station's defensive systems crumbled. The Krellian warships, now defenseless, were easy targets for the remaining human fleet. One by one, the ships fell, unable to defend themselves against the human assault. In a matter of hours, the Krellian capital had been brought to its knees. When the dust settled, General Holt stood victorious. The Krellians had lost their stronghold. Their once unstoppable empire had been broken. The gods were no longer in control. The humans had proven that they could not be erased, that they had the strength and the will to fight for their freedom. This wasn't just a victory. It was a message to the galaxy. No species, no matter how powerful, could ever again take humanity for granted. But the battle wasn't over. The Krellians would regroup. They would fight back. And the humans were ready. They had shown the galaxy that even against the greatest odds, they would rise. The fight for control had only just begun, but now humanity stood on the cusp of victory, and there was no turning back. After the devastating initial attack on Earth, humanity was left in ruins. Cities burned, families were torn apart, and civilization as they knew it seemed to crumble. The Krellians, a race of advanced, godlike beings, had come with the sole purpose of eradicating humanity. They believed that Earth's inhabitants were weak, insignificant, and easy to destroy. They attacked without hesitation, sure that their superior technology and military power would crush the humans with little effort. But the Krellians vastly underestimated one thing: the human will to survive. While most of the world fell into chaos, a small organized group of human survivors began to gather in the shadows. The planet was left in ruins, but the humans were not completely defeated. They retreated into the wilderness, into hidden bunkers and underground cities, finding shelter wherever they could. But more importantly, they began to rebuild. What the Krellians had failed to notice was that the humans, even in the face of extinction, still had a spark of resilience, something no godlike species could understand. General Sarah Holt, a brilliant military leader, was among the first to rally what was left of humanity's forces. She understood the severity of the situation, but also the opportunity hidden within it. The humans had been pushed to the edge, but that very desperation had created something powerful: unity. They knew they had no choice but to fight back. The resistance was born not from hope, but from necessity. The Krellians had made a grave mistake by underestimating humanity's adaptability. In their hiding, the humans began to study Krellian technology. They salvaged weapons from destroyed battlefields and reverse-engineered their enemies' advanced systems. Despite their limited resources, they used their resourcefulness to craft new, deadly weapons that could match the Krellians' technology. What they lacked in numbers, they made up for in ingenuity. Small teams of engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to build machines capable of turning the tide of the war. As the human resistance grew stronger, so did their resolve. They were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting to take back what was rightfully theirs. The Krellians, on the other hand, remained confident. They believed that humanity was all but finished. But as the weeks turned into months, and the small pockets of human survivors continued to strike back, something began to shift. The humans were learning, adapting, and evolving their tactics in ways the Krellians had not anticipated. The gods were no longer untouchable. Humanity was beginning to show them that they had a power the Krellians could not comprehend. The power to fight, to persevere, and to never give up. General Holt, along with the leaders of the human resistance, began planning more coordinated attacks. They weren't just reacting to Krellian strikes anymore. They were on the offensive. Human forces were attacking Krellian supply lines, striking at their weak points, and forcing the enemy into defensive positions. Every victory, no matter how small, brought them closer to their ultimate goal, to dismantle the Krellian Empire and prove to the universe that humanity was not to be underestimated. The Krellians, growing increasingly desperate as their plans were foiled, began to doubt the supremacy they had long taken for granted. The humans were no longer the weak, unorganized creatures they had once thought. They were a force that could not be wiped out. The resistance was growing, and it was only a matter of time before humanity would strike back harder than ever before. The once mighty Krellians, with all their power, couldn't foresee the spark that humanity had ignited. What they thought was just a small, defeated species had now become the unstoppable force they had always feared. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were fighting back, and they were doing it with a passion that no invader could ever truly crush. The war for survival had turned into something greater, a war to prove that humanity could not and would not be erased. The battle for humanity's survival had reached a critical point. The Krellians, once so confident in their ability to wipe out the human race, were beginning to realize they had made a grave mistake. While they had destroyed Earth's cities and decimated humanity's military forces, they had underestimated one crucial factor: the resilience of the human spirit. General Sarah Holt, along with the leaders of the resistance, now knew that they had a real chance of defeating their once invincible enemies. The tide was turning in their favor. Humanity had learned from their past failures and used their greatest strengths to adapt and counter the Krellians' superior technology. General Holt had personally overseen the development of new weapons and strategies, employing a mixture of guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and intelligence to keep the Krellians off balance. But more importantly, humanity had learned to use the power of unity. The Krellians may have been gods, but they had no understanding of what it meant to fight for survival, for family, for home. Humanity did not need the vast fleets of the Krellians to win this war. They needed the will to fight. The humans had managed to infiltrate Krellian-controlled territories, striking at their weak points. This wasn't a matter of brute force anymore. It was about using their enemies' arrogance against them. While the Krellians were focused on their next devastating blow to Earth, they were blind to the increasing strength of the human resistance. Small cells of human fighters had learned to operate in the shadows, outsmarting their technologically superior enemies at every turn. They sabotaged Krellian supply lines, destroyed key weapons caches, and made it clear that they were not easy prey. The Krellians, for the first time in the war, began to feel the pressure. This was not a war of might alone. The humans had adapted the Krellian technology they had scavenged and turned it into something more dangerous, something that could fight back. They had discovered weaknesses in the Krellian defense systems and learned how to exploit them. What the Krellians had once considered unbeatable now had cracks. The humans had turned their own technology into a weapon. The humans didn't just adapt. They improvised, creating unexpected surprises that the Krellians couldn't predict. The shift was becoming undeniable. After a series of successful covert operations, the human resistance had gained momentum. Cities once lost to the Krellians were now being retaken. Small victories, one after another, chipped away at the Krellian hold on Earth. The survivors were beginning to hope again. And the more the humans fought back, the more they learned to harness their greatest asset, their creativity. Humans were able to think beyond what their enemies could imagine. While the Krellians were confined by their own overconfidence, humanity used their resourcefulness to come up with new ways to strike. One of the most significant victories came when a group of human rebels managed to take down a Krellian communications hub. This was no ordinary victory. It was a game changer. The humans had succeeded in severing the Krellians' link to their central command. Without communication, the once coordinated Krellian fleets became disorganized and vulnerable. The humans knew that the time had come for them to take the next step. They had successfully disrupted the Krellian Empire's ability to coordinate and respond. Now, it was time to bring the fight to their front door. General Holt and her team had meticulously planned the next phase of the war. With the Krellians' communication network in chaos, they could strike where it would hurt the most, their central command. The Krellians may have controlled the stars, but humanity had found a way to disrupt their hold. The first step was to gain access to the heart of the Krellian Empire, the Krellian capital. It was a highly fortified station, guarded by advanced fleets and defensive shields. But the humans had spent months preparing. They had learned the patterns of the Krellian defense systems, and they knew where the holes were. With this knowledge, they set their sights on their target. The mission was going to be a calculated risk. General Holt understood that even the slightest mistake could mean total disaster. But the humans had no choice. If they were to win this war, they had to deal a decisive blow. The plan was to infiltrate the Krellian capital, take out its defenses, and strike at the energy core that powered the station. If they could destroy the heart of the Krellian Empire, it would cripple their entire operation. This was their chance to shift the war in their favor once and for all. But as humanity prepared for their boldest mission yet, the Krellians, still in disbelief, were beginning to understand the depth of their mistake. They had treated humanity like an insect to be crushed, a species too weak to fight back. What they hadn't counted on was the relentless nature of human perseverance. As the resistance gathered its forces, the final countdown began. The battle for control of the galaxy was about to reach its boiling point. Humanity had proven that they could adapt, learn, and strike back. Now, they were ready for the next phase in their war for survival. This was more than just a fight for survival. It was a fight for identity, for the right to exist. The Krellians may have seen themselves as gods, but humanity was showing them that no species, no matter how powerful, could ever be beyond challenge. The war had begun, but the final victory was still waiting to be claimed. The battle for control of the galaxy had reached a tipping point. After humanity's series of brilliant strikes against the Krellian forces, the resistance was no longer on the defensive. General Sarah Holt and her allies had proven that the human spirit could not be crushed. The tides of war were shifting, and now, the fight for control was about to escalate to unimaginable levels. It was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming humanity's rightful place in the universe. The humans had fought tooth and nail to get this far. Every victory, no matter how small, had been hard-won. But with each one, the resistance had grown bolder, more confident. The Krellians, once supreme, had begun to feel the pressure. Humanity's adaptation to their advanced technology had leveled the playing field. With the Krellian communications network compromised and their military tactics undercut, the time had come for the resistance to launch a decisive strike, the kind that could shake the Krellian Empire to its core. General Holt knew that now, with their backs against the wall, the Krellians would not hesitate to retaliate. Their pride was at stake, and with their military might still formidable, they would do whatever it took to push humanity back into the darkness from which they had come. But Holt had a plan, a bold one. Take down the heart of the Krellian Empire, their central military command, and cripple their leadership. The target was clear. The Krellian Imperial Citadel, a massive space station that floated in the heart of the galaxy, surrounded by layers of high-tech shields and powerful fleets. The Citadel was not only a symbol of Krellian power, it was the command center for their entire military strategy. It housed the supreme leadership of the Krellian race, including the high commanders who orchestrated the attacks on Earth. If the humans could breach the Citadel and take down its leadership, the Krellian war machine would collapse. Without a head to direct their forces, the remaining Krellian fleets would be scattered, vulnerable to further attacks. But getting to the Citadel would not be easy. It was heavily fortified, with defenses so advanced that only a direct assault could possibly break through. The humans, however, were no strangers to overwhelming odds. They had learned how to strike hard and fast, to use guerrilla tactics and subterfuge to create chaos among their enemies. This time, they would need to be even more clever. The mission required precision, stealth, and timing. One mistake, and they could lose everything. Holt gathered her most trusted officers, engineers, and tactical experts. She knew this would be their hardest mission yet, but there was no turning back now. This would be the moment that defined humanity's future. The team was prepared to infiltrate the Citadel's outer defenses, disable its communication systems, and strike directly at its core, the nerve center of the Krellian leadership. The plan was risky, but the humans had one advantage that the Krellians had never anticipated: human adaptability. The Krellians were too reliant on their technology, too sure of their invincibility, but the humans had learned how to exploit every crack in the Krellian armor. They had spent months infiltrating Krellian supply lines, studying their ships, their weapons, their defenses. Every piece of Krellian technology had been turned into a tool of resistance. The humans were now more than just survivors. They were hunters, and the Krellians were their prey. The first step of the plan was to infiltrate the outer defenses of the Krellian citadel. Holt's forces would approach in stealth, using the debris of battle to cover their movements. As they neared the citadel, the human fleet split into smaller squads, each assigned a different task. Some would create diversions, while others would infiltrate the citadel itself. It was a daring move, but the humans had no choice. They could not afford to waste time or resources. They had learned to fight with nothing, and now they were about to prove that they could strike at the very heart of the Krellian Empire. As they closed in, the Krellian defenses began to respond. Their warships, sleek and deadly, moved into position to intercept the human fleet. But the humans were prepared. They had anticipated the Krellians' counterattack and launched a counteroffensive of their own. Human ships danced between the larger Krellian warships, using speed and agility to avoid the enemy's powerful blasts. The humans had learned how to move like ghosts in the void of space, staying just out of reach of their enemies' weapons. The battle raged on outside the citadel, but Holt's primary objective was clear: get inside. The humans had devised a way to breach the citadel's outer wall, using a combination of hacked Krellian weapons and newly developed human technology. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was enough. As the human teams infiltrated the citadel's core, they encountered fierce resistance from Krellian soldiers, but the humans were relentless. They fought with the fury of those who had everything to lose. Once inside, Holt and her team made their way to the central command center, where the Krellian leadership waited. The final showdown had arrived. The human resistance had come to claim their future, and the Krellians were about to face the full force of humanity's unyielding will. The Krellians thought they were gods, but they were about to learn what happens when they try to wipe out a species that refuses to be erased. As Holt and her team closed in on their target, the countdown began. The future of humanity rested on their shoulders. They were about to make history, and they would do it by taking down the very empire that thought it could crush them. But even with everything at stake, Holt remained calm. This was their moment. Humanity's moment to show the galaxy that they were more than just survivors. They were conquerors. They had come to take back what was theirs. The final blow would be struck, and the Krellians would never see it coming. The tension in the air was thick as General Sarah Holt and her team navigated the final stretch toward the Krellian leadership. Time was running out, and every step they took brought them closer to the heart of the citadel. The resistance had spent months preparing for this one moment, and now there was no turning back. Humanity's fate, no, the fate of the entire galaxy, rested on their success. As the team advanced through the darkened corridors of the Krellian capital, they couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale and magnificence of the citadel. Towering walls made of alien metal reflected the dim glow of the emergency lights. This wasn't just a military base. It was a symbol of Krellian supremacy, their unchallenged reign over the stars. But that reign was about to be broken. The humans moved quickly, not allowing themselves to be distracted. Every corner turned, every door opened, brought them closer to the heart of their enemy. The sounds of Krellian soldiers, highly trained, technologically advanced, could be heard echoing in the distance. But it didn't matter. The humans had the element of surprise, and they knew how to use it. Their movements were swift, calculated, and precise. Every shot fired was a statement that humanity would not be erased. The battle inside the citadel was brutal. The Krellians were relentless, but they had underestimated the humans once again. The resistance, small in numbers, fought with a ferocity that the Krellians had never seen before. They didn't just fight for survival. They fought for their home, for their families, and for the future of their species. This was their last stand, and they would make sure it counted. The Krellians, though powerful, were now faced with an enemy that would not back down. As General Holt and her elite strike team reached the inner sanctum, the central command center, things began to feel surreal. The vast hall stretched before them, lit by flickering holographic displays and surrounded by massive consoles. The tension in the room was palpable. Ahead, the leaders of the Krellian Empire stood waiting, watching with cold, calculating eyes. For the first time since the war began, the Krellians weren't sure they would win. The leader of the Krellian forces, Commander Vrel, stood at the head of the control room, his eyes narrowed with a mix of anger and disbelief. "You humans are persistent," he growled, his voice echoing through the chamber. "But this is where your journey ends. You will never have the power you crave. You are weak. You are nothing." The words hit hard. Vrel believed that the humans were nothing more than insects. They had been too insignificant, too weak to even comprehend the depth of their own destruction. To him, their resistance was an annoyance, a futile attempt to defy the inevitable. But in that moment, standing face to face with the human resistance, he realized that they had become something far more dangerous than any enemy he had ever faced. They had become the willpower of an entire species, a species that would stop at nothing to protect what was theirs. General Holt stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "You've underestimated us from the start. We're not fighting for power. We're fighting to exist. And we're not going to stop until we've taken back what you took from us." Her voice was firm, filled with a quiet, unshakable confidence. "Your empire ends here, Commander." Before Vrel could respond, the countdown to activate the energy core began. Holt's team had infiltrated the central system, and they were ready to shut down the Citadel's power supply. The destruction of the Krellian leadership was imminent. It was a calculated strike. The humans didn't just want to defeat their enemies. They wanted to leave a mark on the galaxy, a reminder that no one, no matter how powerful, could ever erase humanity. The final seconds ticked away as the resistance fighters moved into position. The battle for control was reaching its climax, and every passing second brought them closer to their goal. Holt felt the weight of the moment in her bones. This was humanity's chance to prove their worth, to show the universe that they were not a species to be wiped out. They were survivors, they were conquerors, and they would win. Suddenly, the Krellian leader's arrogance broke. "No," Vrel shouted, his voice laced with panic. "You can't." But it was too late. The blast from the core hit with such force that the entire citadel shook. A blinding light exploded from the heart of the station, and the shockwave sent Krellian soldiers flying. For a moment, everything stood still, silent and frozen. Then the power systems of the citadel flickered and collapsed. The once immense technological structure that had ruled the galaxy for so long was now nothing more than a shell. The humans had done it. They had broken the heart of the Krellian Empire. As the dust settled, Holt stood in the midst of the wreckage, a slight smile forming on her face. She could feel it. The end of the war was now within reach. The resistance had proven that no force, no matter how advanced or godlike, could ever dominate humanity. The Krellians had tried to wipe them out, to erase them from existence. And now, they had failed. The Krellian Empire would crumble, piece by piece. The remnants of their forces, scattered across the galaxy, would find no refuge. The humans had not only won, they had taken control of their own fate. It was a new dawn for humanity, a future that they would now shape for themselves. But General Holt knew this was only the beginning. The battle for the galaxy was over, but the war for humanity's place in the stars was just beginning. The universe had learned a lesson that day. Never underestimate the resilience of the human spirit. The Krellians had learned the hard way, and humanity had come out victorious. As Holt looked at her team, she knew this victory was just one chapter in their story. But for now, they had made their mark. They had shown the galaxy that humanity would not be erased, and the future was theirs to shape. The aftermath of the battle for the Krellian capital left the galaxy forever changed. The once proud empire that had seen itself as invincible was now in ruins, its leadership obliterated in a single decisive blow. The Krellian military, shattered and disorganized, could no longer maintain their grip on the stars. For the first time in the war, the Krellians knew what it felt like to be on the losing side. And they weren't the only ones who noticed. Across the galaxy, various alien species watched in stunned silence. The news of the human victory spread like wildfire, carried by the few remaining Krellian warships that had managed to escape the blast. Word of the humans' tenacity, their adaptability, and their sheer will to survive reached every corner of the galaxy. It was impossible to ignore. In that moment, humanity had shifted the balance of power, and the universe had learned a brutal lesson. Never underestimate the resilience of a species willing to fight for its existence. But even as humanity celebrated its victory, General Sarah Holt knew that this was not the end. The Krellians may have been defeated, but their empire had many allies, others who might now see humanity's rise as a threat. The human resistance had taken down one empire, but they had also made powerful enemies. The galaxy was vast, and not all species would appreciate the new order humanity was beginning to establish. In fact, many would want to stop it. "We've only just begun," Holt muttered to herself as she looked out over the ruins of the Krellian capital. It was a bittersweet moment. Yes, they had won, but the war was far from over. There were other forces in the galaxy, powerful, ancient species that would never tolerate the rise of a new power. The humans had proven they could defeat the Krellians, but could they survive the attention of the rest of the galaxy? The answer was not yet clear. The next few weeks were critical. Humanity began to rebuild. Cities destroyed by Krellian bombardment were slowly but surely being restored. Technology that had been once captured from the enemy was now being studied and adapted, giving humans access to weapons and technologies that had once seemed like mere fantasy. But it wasn't just about technology. Humanity was learning to become a force to be reckoned with, a collective entity that could not be easily subdued. The fight for survival had forged a new identity, one of unity and resilience. Now, the question was whether humanity could hold on to that power, or whether it would fracture under the weight of its own newfound strength. General Holt's military leadership, once focused on survival, now shifted to the next phase of humanity's evolution. The colonization of new worlds began. Human ships, faster and more efficient than before, set their sights on the distant stars, eager to expand their reach and protect their new way of life. But with each new world they claimed, the humans risked drawing the attention of other, more dangerous forces. They were still too small, too new. The Krellians were just one species. There were others that ruled far larger swathes of the galaxy. Humanity had risen from the ashes, but the ashes still held threats far beyond their comprehension. One of the first challenges came from the Therak Dominion, a warlike species that had long maintained a fragile truce with the Krellians. The Therak were not about to let the balance of power shift without contest. They had their own vast fleets and technologically advanced war machines. The Therak saw the human victory as a direct challenge to their dominance and quickly began amassing their forces. For them, humanity was a potential threat that had to be eliminated before it grew too powerful. However, humanity was no longer the weak, desperate species the Therak had once ignored. General Holt knew that a confrontation with the Therak was inevitable. And yet, she was confident. They had already faced an overwhelming enemy, and they had won. Now it was time to prove that humanity's resilience was not just a product of desperation. It was a product of their very nature. "Let them come," Holt said with determination as she watched the Therak fleet begin its advance toward human space. "We've faced worse. We will face worse again. And we will win." This was a new era for humanity. one of constant growth, constant struggle, and unyielding resolve. The victory over the Krellians had shown the galaxy that humanity was no longer a species to be disregarded or wiped out. They had done the impossible, and now they would fight to hold on to what they had earned. The Krellians may have believed they were gods, but humanity had proven that no one could hold dominion over them forever. The final battle against the Krellians had marked the beginning of humanity's rise, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter in the galactic struggle. Humanity had made its mark, and now it would protect it at all costs. In the quiet moments of reflection, as Holt stood by the ruins of the Krellian capital, she couldn't help but think of the thousands who had fallen in this war, those who had fought and died for this victory. They would never be forgotten, but their sacrifice would not be in vain. Humanity had shown the universe that they were more than just survivors. They were fighters, innovators, and now leaders. The future was uncertain, and the galaxy was still full of unknown dangers. But one thing was clear: humanity would never back down. The Krellians had tried to wipe them out, but now they held the power, and they weren't going to let it go without a fight. Humanity had taken the first step in what would be a long journey. The galaxy was vast, and many challenges awaited. But with their resilience, their unity, and their unbreakable spirit, they had proven they could rise again, no matter what stood in their way. And this time, they were ready for whatever came next.